What I have here is the Andsky Apex 50. This is a very affordable, currently on sale for $16.99, and supposedly very long range and very powerful bike. This is a 52 volt, 25 amp hour battery, and they say each of these hub motors, because it has two, is capable of 1,000 watts continuous, 1,500 watts of peak power, meaning you have a total of 3,000 watts. Now, if what we really have here is a 3,000 watt bike with a battery that large for well under the $2,000 price range, that potentially could be a good deal. I see some things that are a little inexpensive as far as quality goes, but that could be a lot of power for the money. I'm somewhat skeptical about the motor claim because the motor cables are really small, smaller than I think they should be for 1,500 watts. But that's why I have a dyno, so we can test things out and we will know for sure how much power this puts down to the ground. Now, the motor claims are identical, both front and rear, so we should have no trouble just testing just the rear motor. We've got an ignition switch here and then the on button for the screen. I've not even ridden this bike at all, so I'm gonna turn the assist level all the way up to 5 in case that matters. And now we're just gonna go ahead and give this thing full throttle and see what happens. So that didn't feel bad. I mean, this bike is gonna have some power with both motors on, but as I suspected, that didn't look like 1,500 watts. The speedometer did seem to top out about 32 miles an hour. They had some claims on their website of over 30 miles an hour for top speed, so that may be true. And the real peak power numbers are 948 watts and 23.77 pound-feet of torque. So if we double that, we're getting just under 2,000 watts. So yeah, that's a lot of power, but that is not 3,000 watts. That's not even remotely close to 3,000 watts in my opinion. And 23 pound-feet of torque on a single geared hub motor is a little on the low end. You know, obviously we're gonna be around 46, 47 once we double those. So that is gonna be a powerful bike with both motors on, but individually, you know, the performance might be a little lackluster. It's definitely less than advertised. So at least we know for sure what we've got now. They do rate these as 1,000 watt continuous. Really that's closer to the peak power. In fact, we got, like I said, slightly less than that. So don't get me wrong, this is still a lot of power in a single bike. This thing is probably still gonna climb hills really well. It's probably still gonna be really fast. So here's the list of everything on the dyno board so far. Now what I had set up was stock e-bikes. And then I had scooters, electric motorcycles, skateboards, and then aftermarket e-bikes, things that have been modified. So this is testing different motors, controllers, things that aren't set up that way out of the box. Now the list is getting kind of large and convoluted, and I've been trying to decide how do I make this a little bit cleaner and compare bikes that are similar. I thought about tire sizes and all sorts of different things, but what it comes down to is, I think what makes the most sense is to have 3 categories under stock e-bikes. We're gonna have hub motors, we're gonna have dual motor bikes because they double the torque and power, so it's not a good comparison to a single motor bike usually. And then we have mid-drives. So I'm gonna reorganize these and then we're gonna put the Andsky Apex 50 where it belongs with the dual motor options. So I've got a little work ahead of me. And hopefully by memory I can remember what motor every single one of these bikes has. I do have one odd one here. It's the bimodal kit. I think it performs most similarly to a mid-drive, even though it's driving the rear hub. So I'm gonna put it by the mid-drive bikes. that organization is going to be somewhat short-lived. I still have, it looks like, the majority of hub motors. These are all hub motors. These are also all hub motors. I still got to have 2 rows, but I at least have pulled out the dual hub motor bikes, the mid-drive bikes. So now we can better compare the Andsky compared to other dual motor bikes. So the Walkie H6 Max, Aoki A8 Pro Max, it's going to do better than that. It's going to do better than the Mooncool MC3, and it looks like it's going to be right here. So underneath the Romeo Pro and the Aoki A8. So although it may not be the 3,000 watt advertised, and Andsky's marketing team may be a little bit disappointed. You know, specifically them meeting it from Jackson.
And yes, disappointed they were, but there's 2 things we could do from here. I could release the video as is and say, yeah, it doesn't produce as much power as advertised, or we could find out why. So I had some discussions back and forth with Andsky about this before this little section of the video was added in right here to figure out what's going on. Now, first they insisted that it could do 3,000 watts, or at least the motors could do a theoretical 1,500 watts. And they sent me this little clip, which I thought was quite fascinating because this is an actual dyno video of the motor itself that they use on the bike. Now, it did show that they were trying to push 1,500 watts through the motor, but if you look at the efficiency, we weren't actually getting that. And also, to get those kinds of numbers, they were pushing a lot of current through the motors, more than I thought the bike probably could do. So what I did next was pull the bike apart and look at the motor controller. Now, based on my dyno results, I guessed that the motor controller was probably pushing about 19, maybe 20 amps through to each motor. And surprise, surprise, that's basically what we found. The motor controller was rated for 18 amps plus or minus 2. But it's not all bad news. There are some changes being made to the bike. So I'm going to tell you what Andsky is telling me. I'm going to include it in this video. I don't have dyno results of this because I don't have this version of the bike. So the bike that I have in this video, these are the real results that I got. But they're telling me that the current versions of the bike that are shipping out to customers, they have bumped up to a 25 amp controller, which should give 1,300 watts per motor or 2,600 watts total, which is a pretty substantial improvement over the bike that I have. I at least have my dyno footage and their motor dyno footage that I can add that up, look at the numbers, and say, yeah, that does look accurate. So if you buy a new bike, it should have a 25 amp controller, and you should have, again, 2,600 watts instead of the just shy of 2,000 watts that I got. In addition to that, they said the version I received was limited to 32 miles an hour, and they have bumped that up to 35. And on top of that, I'll put a link down in the comments. If you use that particular link, you can get the price of this bike down to $1,349, which includes some free accessories. So more power, cheaper price, all of those sound like a good thing. Now, back to the regular video.
It's still close to 2,000 watts, which is a lot of power. It's a cadence sensor. It's a little jumpy in traffic with the power cranked all the way up and both motors on. So here's what I'm guessing. 2,000 watts, 40-some pound-feet of torque. I'm guessing it's gonna fly right up and over this hill. It should. So we're doing 14, 15 miles an hour, 16, 17, we're accelerating up the hill. Oh, now we're not accelerating. But we're still doing 15, about 15 miles an hour is all it slowed down to. Some bikes slow down to like under 5 miles an hour going up that hill. They're definitely using these motors for the torque. So don't expect a crazy high top speed out of this. Although it does not have a speed limit built in. There definitely is a difference between power on throttle and pedal assist for some reason. So if I pedal up this hill right now, I'm doing like 13, 14 miles an hour. Not bad, but if I twist the throttle, I start accelerating and I get a little more power. So that's a little unusual. Usually pedal assist 5 is like max power, and that doesn't quite seem to be the case on this. It's maximum pedal assist, but then throttle gives you more. I don't know why it's programmed that way, but it is. I figure since this bike has fat tires, full suspension, giant battery, it's kind of like they think it's a do a little bit of everything bike. So let's see if it can do a little bit of everything. So I'm just gonna start out with a little bit of an easygoing ditch trail here, get a feel for the handling of the bike and everything. And then at some point we'll try and take it on some crazier trails that I think it probably shouldn't go on, but we might as well push the limits and see where does this bike falter. Stability seems pretty good so far. If anything, I would say the steering feels a bit sluggish. Now you might expect that from a fat tire bike, but not all fat tire bikes do feel sluggish. Some of them can be big, heavy bikes, heavier even than this, and still feel light and nimble on a trail. And this one doesn't. This is our top speed, 32 miles an hour. It maxes out right there, and it has no more RPM left. All right, now this is where things might get a little scary. This trail's rough. It's gonna test out the suspension. I have my doubts about the suspension performing well, but some bikes surprise me. Oh, whew. I almost wiped out there. So far the suspension feels particularly stiff, especially in the front end. The rear, not so bad. Oh. Oh. So if you kind of bounce up and down on the bike, like the rear end feels reasonably plush. There's no adjustment on the suspension. It's a real inexpensive rear shock, but it works. Like, honestly, it's fine. I wish I could say the same for the front fork though. It's quite jarring and stiff, very springy, and just does not soak up bumps very well. I'm gonna say the ride is much more jarring than it should be for a fat tire, full suspension bike. I mean, fat tires and full suspension should be smooth, but it just isn't. And that's okay. I wasn't expecting much for what I saw on this bike, and for the price, what you're really paying for is battery capacity and performance. By performance, I mean power. Those are the two things that you're getting your money's worth for. I mean, the battery is huge. It's a 52 volt, 25 amp hour. I mean, easily I feel like you could go on a 60, 70 mile ride on this. You just wouldn't want to do it off-road. And then of course you got the dual motors, which you think would be great for off-road, and it's good for traction. So, I mean, if I wanted to use this in, say, like snow or mud or something where it wasn't like terribly rocky, bumpy type of terrain, I think that could be a use case for this. But just general off-road stuff, it's just, the suspension's just not quite to my liking. And it really comes down to the front fork. The tail end of the bike isn't bad. So normally I kind of leave the what would I upgrade till the end of the video, but I'm gonna put this right here. If there's one upgrade this bike needs, it's a new front suspension fork. Now, if you're going on gravel roads like this, that's not too washboardy, it's not so bad. And this is where the dual motors actually shine quite well, because the bike seems really happy to fly up a hill at, right now I'm doing 20 miles an hour. I mean, that's pretty darn good. Actually, we're still accelerating. Now we're up to 24, still going uphill. Oh, and then you hit a big pothole and it reminds you not to go that fast. So its hill climbing ability is great. I mean, it flies up these hills and eats them up. I wonder, I noticed at the beginning that the handling was a little sluggish. I wonder if changing the fork out, you could tweak the geometry a little bit to improve the handling a little bit too. So you might be able to fix both of its flaws with one change. So I would say city riding, smooth gravel roads, smooth dirt roads. Those are gonna be places where this bike is going to excel quite well, especially if you have a lot of steep hills. That's gonna be definitely this bike's strength. And of course, if you got steep uphills, that means you've got steep downhills. And you need some decent brakes, which this does have. It's using the DY Island hydraulic disc brakes. And I've mentioned it on a lot of videos before, but if you haven't seen those, I've seen these on a lot of bikes. They're very affordable brakes. They look kind of inexpensive or cheap almost, but they work, and they work well. No complaints about the braking capabilities of this bike. I'm actually quite happy with it, and I think that's one of the better things about it. You would have to spend a lot of money on brakes to get something that would work better than these. It's nice how it gets right up to top speed. So one of the things you'll find often on bikes is that they go faster than you really have gears for. And this one's kind of interesting because it has more power for some reason, like I said, on throttle than pedal assist. But on pedal assist, if it's flat, I go up to like 25, 26, and I can actually put some input in. At 30, then I'm just spinning. But I think the gearing, it's using a 7-speed Shimano setup, is actually set up pretty nice for pedaling up through about 25 miles an hour or so. But if you're gonna pin the throttle and go up to 30, then might as well just use the throttle at that point. Because you can run just a single motor, and each motor peaks at just under 1,000 watts, I'm gonna say they're pretty much nominal 750 watt motors. And if you hold the info button on the display here, you can change between front motor, rear motor, or both. It does pretty well at keeping up with traffic. It's definitely a power level I would not mind having in city traffic, going from stop sign to stop sign, signal to signal. Here's a good example right here. We're gonna sneak all the way up to this red light in front of all the cars. And when the light turns green, I'm not worried about how fast I'm going because I feel like it's gonna be fast enough. Here we go. Look at that. Look at all that traffic I just skipped. I honestly thought I was gonna do more off-road riding with this bike today than I did, but I just felt like I was getting beat up a little bit too much for it. Now, in the bike's defense, I can't blame the fork for 100% of the handling. There is also a motor up there. So you have, this unsprung weight. But I do feel like I felt better. So I think there's some improvement that could be had in the front end of the bike. I think a combination of fork and maybe some geometry adjustments could make it handle a lot nicer. Now, can it do off-road? Yes, obviously I proved that it did, and nothing broke. So it's not like I'm worried about the bike longevity-wise or anything. It was just kind of a harsh ride. Now, on the plus side, I did mention these DY Island hydraulic brakes. They use extra thick rotors. These are very, very thick compared to a standard bike rotor. The pads are thicker. They really do work kind of nice. I've kind of compared them to almost like a light pit bike sort of brake. Like, start leaning towards motorcycle brakes. They're not quite that big. And just so you know, this does have proper dropouts and everything for a motor to be mounted on a front fork. I don't think people realize how critical it is to have your fork actually properly set up for a front motor. It does limit the options on the fork, so it's part of the challenge of getting nice handling up there. But it looks like from a quality-wise, strength-wise, I think that fork's gonna be just fine and hold up over a nice long time. The screen was nice. I could see everything quite well. Full sun didn't matter. The buttons are easy to push. So this is the info button that you hold down. And as you do that, you'll see it'll change from P0, 1, 2, or 3. So those are your different motor options. So you've got dual motors, rear motor, front motor, both motors. Headlight button right here, that's gonna dim the screen. It does make it quite dim. Probably really only want to do that if it's actually getting dark. And a very big visible round headlight on it. It's quite massive, which is great for night riding. And look at this. Not only is it a tail light, brake light, but it also has turn signals. And that is one of those little beeper sounding horns, but I'm going to tell you that is obnoxiously loud, louder than I thought it was going to be. I'm glad I did not use that on anybody out on the trails today because I might have scared them with that. You do have two sets of keys. You've got the kind of like ignition setup on the throttle here, and then a separate set of keys to lock and unlock the battery. Coming around to the other side, here is that basic rear shock, which actually felt pretty nice. I did point out that it's a 7-speed Shimano tourney, pretty entry-level stuff, using a freewheel on the motor here. Some people prefer metal fenders. I tend to almost prefer plastic fenders on some bikes. They tend to rattle less, make less noise, and I didn't have any weird, clunky noises anywhere on the bike. So no motor controllers rattling around, no battery rattling sound noises, nothing like that. And also, sometimes the cable management can get kind of messy, and this one's pretty clean. They run it into the frame right here, and then it stays in there down into the box here. Now, I do want to mention the size of the bike. They don't have multiple frame sizes, so I think it's important to point out that this one felt a little small to me, kind of like a medium-sized bike. So overall, what do I think of the Apex 50? I mean, it's like $16.99 for the 52-volt 25 amp hour version. It gives you 2 motors. Is it bad for what it is? I mean, price-wise, no. I mean, you're getting good bang for the buck on the battery capacity and the power. Just be aware that it's not 3,000 watts. It's gonna be peak closer to 2,000 watts, but that's still 2,000 watts. It's still a lot. I think if you look at it from a perspective of, is it worth a bike that has fat tires, good brakes, big battery capacity and power, and not so much that you're paying for full suspension, because the front is just really lacking a lot there and is hindering it. But if it seems like it's worth it to you for the battery, the power, and the brakes, then I would say you're definitely getting your money's worth. Now, Andsky did send me this bike to make this video. I am gonna put a link in the description for them. You can, of course, go to AndskyeBike.com. If this is a bike that you were curious about or wanted to look at, I hope this helps you make an informed buying decision.